The youth movement is picking up steam at Chicago Bears training camp, where a couple of veterans are losing their lead in two of the biggest position battles on the roster.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On the show today, I want to check in on a couple of key Chicago Bears training camp battles where rookie second-round pick Ozzy Trapilo has gained some real ground and maybe is surpassing Braxton Jones. And then at running back, where Kyle Monangai is not unseating DeAndre Swift just yet, but kind of subtly Roschon Johnson has snuck back into the background and disappeared a little bit and kind of hasn't been, is becoming the forgotten man in the Bears backfield. And I also want to check in then on where Colston, Loveland, and Luther Burden are in their respective battles. I think they're a little bit farther behind because they got a little bit of a late start in that group. But entering Bears training camp, we thought Braxton Jones would be the favorite to win the left tackle battle. He certainly was the early leader at that position, but now Ozzy Trapilo seems to have, if not surpassed him, at least reached his level and are making this very, very difficult for the Chicago Bears to decide the left tackle situation. So for a long time, even as Braxton Jones was still recovering and ramping up back to full speed from his offseason ankle surgery, he was still getting the first team reps. Before he was even doing team drills, when they would just do kind of warm-up stuff, right? He's always the first guy out there with the left tackle, going through the walkthroughs, like all the things he could physically be capable of doing at this stage of his recovery and ramping up. He was getting a lot of the first team looks. And then when he wasn't doing team drills because he was still ramping up, then Ozzy would get drills and Crown would get drills. But like it still felt like from the start, first place was Braxton Jones. But we knew all along that's totally up for grabs. And now the Bears said last week that I think they were going to use Friday was going to be like their evaluation day. The players had a day off of practice on Friday. And so the coaches were going to meet and kind of check in and say, okay, how are these battles doing? Are we ready to make any declarations or do we want to change anything? And coming out of Friday, you now have Ozzy Trapilo getting more and more of the first team reps. Like after the Bears took a pause to reevaluate some things, they're giving Trapilo more first team opportunities and like the first look at first team opportunities. Now that doesn't mean the battle's over and Trapilo has won it, but it does clearly seem to mark progress for him and also I think some trouble for Braxton Jones. And so I want to hear from Chicago Bears offensive coordinator Declan Doyle here, who explained kind of how the left tackle battle is going and what they like about Ozzy Trapilo in particular.
Declan, Ben mentioned the idea of reassessing the left tackle spot yesterday in the off day. We saw Ozzy was getting the reps with the ones today. Is that how you're going to move forward with this? Is Ozzy going to be getting the bulk of those reps, or how do you proceed there?
Yeah, we're rotating those guys. There's a lot of football left to be played at that position and in that battle. But that was kind of just what the plan was for today. Keep rotating them through, and we're still evaluating that spot.
What do you like about Ozzy and what he brings to that spot?
I think Ozzy, I talked about him last time I was up here, but the maturity, he feels like a veteran. He's able to correct his mistakes. He's very coachable. I know that Dan and Kyle, really like him. But we like a lot of those guys at that spot, and they're going to continue to battle.
They do continue to insist that Karan Amagaji is still part of this battle, and I mean technically he is. He does get some first team reps, etc. But like, it's pretty clearly like functionally a 2-horse race between Braxton Jones and Ozzy Trapilo, and I think they're doing this switch up now to kind of give Ozzy some more opportunities to kind of show what he could do. I know during the Family Fest practice at Soldier Field, he seemed to struggle quite a bit when under the lights when the pads went on. I know Cole Kmet thought maybe there was some sort of like nervous energy from the young guys trying to get used to playing in Soldier Field with fans around, in front of everything. Like, I can see where that might make a player not play as well. And certainly we shouldn't judge a position battle off of a couple of Twitter videos from Soldier Field. But I think they want to see more from Trapilo and really see, like, okay, like, instead of this true rotation, he's doing well with the second team. Like, let's get him out there with more first team reps and really see how he looks. Because maybe they have a more clear picture of, like, yeah, we kind of know what Braxton Jones is. And so there's more value in right now giving Trapilo some extra looks to truly see, is he better than Braxton Jones? Because I think up to this point, they want to see how Jones recovered, how he ramped up. And, like, I think my theory is they kind of have, like, checked a box in their head on Braxton Jones. Say, okay, like, he's back to where we thought he would be. We know what Braxton Jones is. So let's give Trapilo some more reps to see if a little bit more action, a little bit more opportunity to refine and grow, like, can get him past that point, because you kind of know what you have already with Braxton Jones. So that's going to be interesting to see how those snaps continue to play out. It's hard to sit here today and say, oh, who's going to win then? Because, I mean, it feels about as close to 50-50 as you could ask for at this stage of the process. But I do wonder if, I know the goal is always build the best offensive line possible and who's going to help you win right away in week one. But just given the broader team building goals and strategy, like, if Braxton Jones and Ozzy Trapilo are pretty close, I wonder if there's not an advantage to starting Braxton Jones. Like, if it's a toss-up, go with the veteran, because there's maybe some less volatility there. But also, I just think more broadly, Braxton Jones is coming into the last year of his rookie contract. He's going to be a free agent this offseason. And so, a couple things. One, the better he plays, the more money he's going to get from other teams and give you a better compensatory draft pick as the Chicago Bears. Or B, you could trade him mid-season at the deadline or early in the season and then go to Trapilo. Like, if you think Trapilo's close, you could try and build up Braxton Jones's trade value. Because right now, coming off the injury last season, like, not that his value is going to be nothing, but it's going to be a little bit lower than if you're in week 4 and some AFC team loses their left tackle for the season. Maybe you can get a decent mid-round draft pick for Braxton Jones. Now, he's an expiring contract. He's not a Pro Bowl left tackle. You're not getting a huge pick for him, but, could you get a 5th-round pick for Braxton Jones just to give you something, or maybe, just to make it worth your while instead of the compensatory pick you think you might get when he goes into free agency? And then along with that, too, is that Braxton Jones has a pretty, I don't want to say robust injury history. That's probably too strong, but the last 2 seasons, we've seen Braxton Jones miss 5 games this past season and 6 games the year before that. Like, if you start Braxton Jones in week 1 and you go in with him as your week 1 starter, it seems like, 2 out of his 3 years, he's missed 5+ games. So odds are that he might miss a couple of games this season, and then Trapilo's going to get in there anyway. And along the way, you don't have to throw a rookie out there. You can bring him along a little bit slowly, and I just wonder if some of that could be valuable for Trapilo. Because when it comes to, like, sitting rookies versus playing rookies, typically, you want to play the guy who's a little bit inexperienced because he just need more reps, right? We think about Mitch Trubisky or Trey Lance and some of these quarterbacks. It's just like some of these guys just need to be out there because they haven't played a lot of high level football and they need to learn by doing. But I think Trapilo is experienced and smart and like doesn't necessarily need live reps to get better, right? It's just refining technique and really working off, outside of game day to fix little things that maybe sitting him can have a little bit of real value for that. That, of course, he could do it while he's playing as well. But again, if it's a toss-up and there's all these other reasons, I think there is an incentive to start Braxton Jones over Ozzy Trapilo if all things are equal. If Trapilo is clearly the better player, use the better left tackle, give yourself the best offensive line. If it's close, like it feels like it is now, I still lean Braxton Jones there. Now, I don't think it's as clear-cut in the running back room where 7th-round rookie Kyle Monangai continues to impress in ways that I think a lot of us predicted. And kind of quietly, Roschon Johnson's become the forgotten man. So I want to take a look at how the running back rotation is doing and what that means for not only this season, but the future of the Bears backfield next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, but minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. So whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Because let's be honest, some days on the course or sometimes just in life, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. And that's where the delicious flavors of the transfusion drink in the form of a 5-Hour Energy really does make all the difference. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. We had a feeling that Kyle Monangai would step into this Bears backfield, even as a rookie 7th-round pick, and have an impact, make an impression, and provide more value than you typically get from 7th-round picks. That's not really the surprising part for me. The part of the surprise here more is like all offseason, even in the lead up to the draft and since the draft, like we really haven't heard much from Ben Johnson or any of the coaching staff about Roschon Johnson. And that to me has been interesting. I think he's been asked about it. I feel like his name came up at like one time, but there's a whole website that tracks coach press conference called the Coach Speak Index. And there's actually a lot of cool stuff they're able to glean from that stuff that you might not normally expect. But like they've said Ben Johnson hasn't had a Roschon Johnson comment yet. I think they may have missed one, but even if it was just one, the fact that we've heard Ben Johnson endorse DeAndre Swift many, many times and say, all the value and stuff. And some of this is like the media has to ask about it. Ben Johnson's at a press conference. He's not just volunteering these answers. And so some of this is just to say no one's asked about Roschon Johnson, but that's a piece of evidence in itself. No one has really asked about Roschon Johnson. He just hasn't been somebody who has been notable in any real way. And that's not here. I'm not here to say like, oh, that means he's going to be a surprise training camp cut. Like that to me would be a few steps too far. But in terms of someone who we were hoping to see step into a bigger role this season, who's been a little bit certainly underwhelming the last year, but we were so optimistic after his rookie season and even in the draft when they took him in the 4th round. Like there's a lot to really like about Roschon Johnson, and yet all we hear about is mostly Kyle Monangai being the guy who stands out, but he's also the new face versus, the guys who have been there aren't as interesting and there's not as much to talk about when it comes to, DeAndre Swift is still DeAndre Swift, right? But the way they talk about Kyle Monangai and the confidence that Ben Johnson talks about him here is he seems like he's being very loud and clear about how they feel about Monangai and whether that's intentionally to send a message to Roschon Johnson and the other running backs that, hey, you got to get your stuff together, or whether it's just genuinely, in the complimenting the young running back. This sounds a pretty direct confirmation that he's going to be a big part of this Bears backfield this season behind DeAndre Swift.
He crammed it up in there. He was physical. I mean, I thought all the runners, I thought Roschon, I thought Swifty, I thought Ian, I thought all those guys, they were putting their shoulders down and they were running through contact. And if they saw a little crease, that's where I had a little bit better view than the other coaches, just seeing holes, whether they were there or not. And I thought those guys were trying to play a physical brand of football all around.
Is he one of those guys that obviously maybe his numbers at the combine didn't pop, but with the pads on, he's a different player?
Yes, I think so. I'm very pleased with where he's at, and I think he's a guy that we're going to be able to trust this fall.
We haven't really heard Ben Johnson be that definitive about other players in the same way. I mean, not every player hasn't been a question mark about whether this guy is going to play, but it's wild that like beginning of August, 7th round rookie, going to be an important part of our backfield this season. Like no doubt, no questions, this guy is going to play. And so you start to do the math here a little bit on like, okay, we know DeAndre Swift's going to be the number one running back. Like maybe over time, over the course of the season, that rotation can shift and change. But generally speaking, right, we know that Swift is going to be the number one back for the majority of the year. If we also know then that Kyle Monangai is going to play a real major significant role in this Bears backfield, then what does that leave for Roschon Johnson. Like almost regardless of how Roschon Johnson has performed, maybe he's been totally fine, but it's just not as interesting or notable. But like we haven't seen Ben Johnson really use 3 running backs in any real, consistent capacity. He's always been a really big 2-headed monster group where David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, at one point DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, right? Like he kind of always had this 1-2 punch. And very few offenses have a big role for the number 3 running back. His number 3 in Detroit was Craig Reynolds the last 3 or 4 seasons. And, the last 3 or 4 years for Craig Reynolds in Detroit, he gets somewhere between 25 to 40 carries and gets between 100 and 200 yards. Like, that's the number 3 running back in Ben Johnson's Lions offense, which is not going to be a 1-to-1 translation to the Chicago Bears offense. But, like, that's the closest benchmark we can kind of point to say, maybe Roschon Johnson is going to have a similar year this year that he did last year. Last year he had 55 carries for 150 yards. And it was a disappointing yards per average attempt there, but like he was good in short yardage situations. Like maybe that kind of ends up being Roschon Johnson's role this year, that a guy that we thought was going to be the number 2 and you hope could take that next step and maybe try and push for that lead back role in that rotation. Well, now feels like that's going to be Kyle Monangai. And maybe Roschon Johnson ends up playing a role a little more similar to like what we saw Travis Homer do last season, where, but obviously instead of being a pass catching back, he'd be the short yardage back. But like maybe Roschon Johnson comes in on short yardage situations, 3rd and 4th down, and then also does some pass protection because he's been pretty consistent at that and a better option than DeAndre Swift in pass protection. And like maybe that's his role. Like maybe he's not getting many like 1st and 10 carries. Maybe his yards per carry average is going to be pretty low, but he's going to get you to a lot of first downs and do some dirty work. And it's going to feel like another disappointing Roschon Johnson year. But, you got a starter in Swift and you got a 7th rounder who's really impressing. Like at some point, it's just the reality for the players involved. And it's tricky. I think that the dynamic I'm stuck on here is like, is this a 7th round pick who's really, really good, or a 4th round pick in Roschon Johnson who's really bad? I mean, that's too strong, right? But like, is this Roschon is bad? Is this Kyle Monangai is good? Or is it both? Because it could be like Roschon's just been fine and Monangai's just been better. Or it could be that Monangai's just been fine and Roschon's been worse. So I'm kind of curious, especially once we get into the preseason games, how the running back rotation is going to look. Because certainly in year 3 of Roschon Johnson's rookie contract, right? He's not going to get cut. This is not a camp. It's not a camp body like roster spot thing. Like they're going to hold on to Roschon Johnson even if he's a healthy scratch this upcoming season. But in the preseason games, are we going to see a bunch of Monangai because he's a rookie? Are we going to see a bunch of Roschon Johnson because he's fighting for a battle? Or do you just give a lot of the carries to Ian Wheeler, last year's undrafted free agent, because they kind of know what Roschon Johnson is, and maybe by the preseason games, they'll know what Kyle Monangai is. Like I could kind of see this going either way. I mean, they have 6 running backs under contract. Certainly, we're not going to see Swift a lot in the preseason games, but how much they give those other 2 guys is going to be interesting. I mean, maybe there's a certain aspect of like we want to not show Kyle Monangai to the rest of the NFL too much yet because they see him being a bigger part of this offense, and maybe they don't want to put any film of how he handles certain, or not any, but maybe they want to keep him, under wraps a little bit more if they do think he's going to be that second fiddle to DeAndre Swift in this 1-2 punch kind of thing. Like he could be the David Montgomery to Swift's Jahmyr Gibbs, or maybe he's the Jamal Williams to DeAndre Swift's DeAndre Swift from earlier in his time in Detroit. But the fact that a 7th round rookie is beating a 4th round rookie, or beating a former 4th round pick, sure seems like either an absolute home run of a 7th round pick, which seems to be the case, and or trouble from a 4th round pick that you thought should be better than this by now. Like year 3 is supposed to be a step forward, and it doesn't feel like we're getting that or hearing that from Roschon, but there's still time for all of this to shake out, and still time for some of the other young players in position battles to emerge a little bit more. And we've been getting more positive updates about Colston, Loveland, and Luther Burden in recent weeks, but it's clear that they're still behind the veterans ahead of them on the depth chart. So we'll kind of check in on, and I don't know if it's a position battle per se at wide receiver or tight end, but we'll check in on how the rookies are catching up and maybe how far they still have to go next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Gametime comes in, because it's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. As you get closer to the first pitch or the opening kickoff, prices actually drop. And so you can get incredible last-minute deals in the Gametime app. They make ticket buying fast and simple. I have the Gametime app on my phone, and I use it all the time. I've gone to baseball games this summer, gone to Bears games with Gametime. I do concerts, comedians, theater shows, you name it, they've got it all in the Gametime app. You can see your view from your seat, and they've got all-in pricing, so you're not getting any added fees at the end of the checkout process that make your tickets cost way more than you thought they would. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So while Monangai seems to be moving up the running back depth chart and Ozzy Trapilo seems to be advancing in the left tackle battle, we haven't seen, for example, Colston Loveland completely usurp Cole Kmet. And that's not really ever going to happen this season. I mean, we've seen Cole Kmet working with the second team and Loveland with the first team, right? But it's not going to be indicative of how we see them used this season, right? It's not like Kmet's going to be coming off the bench and never seeing the field very much. Like, both of them are going to be integral parts of this Bears offense. So, like, the line between who's the number 1 and number 2 tight end is going to be a little bit blurry there. And same thing at wide receiver, right? Luther Burden's not going to unseat DJ. He's not competing with DJ Moore to be the number 1 receiver or Rome Odunze, right? Like, both of these rookies, the tight end and the wide receiver, kind of have already carved out roles waiting for them that Ben Johnson and company are still just waiting for them to sort of, elevate their game into. But I thought it was really interesting when Ben Johnson talked this weekend. A great question from, I think it was Jason Leisure of the Chicago Sun-Times, about which receivers. He talked specifically about wide receivers and tight ends. So he won't mention any running backs here because it was part of the question, didn't include running backs. But like, of the wide receivers and tight ends, who has really earned Ben Johnson's trust to just know that they're going to be in the right place at the right time when you expect them, that they've picked everything up and they're good to go. And I think it's really meaningful for us to pay attention to the names he mentions and then the names he doesn't to get a sign of how things are progressing.
Wide receivers and the tight ends as well in the passing game. Who are the guys 10 practices in that you really trust right now to be in the right spots at the right times? Who's heard of that?
Yeah. I think Cole Kmet, I think DJ Moore, I think Rome Odunze. Those are the 3 that stand out to me first and foremost. I think OZ's doing a great job of being where he's supposed to be, and he's being a professional about it. The rookies, they're still learning, they're still growing, and they just haven't been out there enough to earn that trust yet. But I would say throughout the course of spring and camp so far, those are the 4 I'd bring up first.
So on the one hand, I get that it shouldn't be a surprise when Ben Johnson says the players he trusts the most are the best veteran players. Like, yes, of course, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, those are established NFL weapons that maybe less so Rome Odunze, but you should expect whatever, I don't know what year, it was an 8th-year receiver in DJ Moore and a 6th-year tight end in Cole Kmet. I don't know, whatever year in their career. Like, at this stage of their careers, DJ Moore and Cole Kmet should be able to pick up an offense quickly and be good to go. And, year 2, Rome Odunze, you're kind of hoping and raising expectations that he can also pick up an offense quickly and good to go. And so, by that standard, right, yes, it shouldn't be surprising then that 2 rookies didn't pick it up as quickly as 2 veterans. But I also think there's something to be said there about somebody like, say, Olamide Zaccheaus also getting mentioned in there. There's plenty of other veteran receivers on this depth chart with some NFL experience. He could have mentioned Devin Duvernay, could have mentioned Tyler Scott. Miles Boykin got hurt, so I guess he's not in the mix. But like Samori Toure, Maurice Alexander has been in Ben Johnson's offense before in Detroit, but it's Zaccheaus who's someone that Ben Johnson already feels like he can trust. And there's another quote from Declan Doyle talking about Zaccheaus as well, as someone who's just like smart, fast, he's going full speed, he's picked up really quickly. And to me, it's almost more about the inclusion of Zaccheaus than the exclusion of Luther Burden that is interesting to me. That like I think there's this feeling like we penciled in Luther Burden as the number 3 receiver in this offense this season, and I'm not sure it's going to be so clear cut. I think I'm starting to expect more that like clearly Odunze and DJ Moore will be the 1 and the 2 in some combination here, and the line between that's going to be blurry. And then I think Zaccheaus and Luther Burden are going to be the 3 and the 4, but I think the line between that's going to be blurry as well. I wonder if those two players end up playing a similar amount of snaps, getting a similar amount of targets and a similar amount of catches over the course of a season. I'm sure in very different roles. I'm sure he wants to use Luther Burden's speed and playmaking ability after catch in a way that's maybe a little bit different than Zaccheaus, who's a good shifty route runner out of the slot and can also line up on the outside, and he can do a lot of different things in your offense. Like, they're not going to have the same literal role in the offense, but like maybe at the end of the season, when you look at the box score and say, who finished first, second, third, fourth in receiving yards, that maybe DJ Moore and Rome Odunze are both pretty tight within a couple hundred yards of each other, and then there's a big gap, and then Zaccheaus and Luther Burden are both within within 100 yards of each other, and like that. It's not very clear, like, oh, here's the number 1, here's the number 2, here's the number 3, and here's the number 4. It's kind of like, yeah, there's the 2 main guys, and then there's the next 2 guys, and it's not as such a clear-cut definition of like, the number 3 wide receiver is blank, because there just isn't quite a true number 3. They're just going to kind of rotate in different circumstances, different opponents, different game plans, different matchups. They say, oh, maybe this week we can match up Luther Burden against this slower cornerback, but maybe the next week they want Zaccheaus' veteran savvy against a younger cornerback, so that might fluctuate from week to week. And same thing with Cole Kmet at tight end, right? Like, as much as eventually Colston Loveland needs to be a better tight end than Cole Kmet, you drafted him in the top 10 overall, and Loveland has looked great at practices and stuff, and we've seen him make spectacular catches, but like we got to see that consistency on every single play, right? Lining up correctly, getting to the right depth. And like, I think we're just waiting for further refinement of that before that really comes up and explodes. And I think a lot of this is just a product of both guys missing essentially all of the offseason up until training camp, where I know Luther Burden technically did a few practices, rookie minicamp before the soft tissue injury started, but like he pretty much missed it all. And of course, Loveland was recovering from shoulder surgery, so he did miss it all. And so they're even farther behind from where other rookies might be. And I think that's part of like to tie this whole theme of the episode together, right? A guy like Trapilo quickly advancing in his battle because he's been able to go from day 1. And Kyle Monangai advancing quickly in his battle because he's been able to go from day 1. But Loveland got a late start. Burden got a late start. Shamar Turner is now injured, and he's going to be way behind compared to some of these other guys. And so I think that's the big difference between why the earlier draft picks aren't advancing as much as, Trapilo's still an early draft pick, right? But the first 2 picks aren't advancing as fast as some of the later picks because they got a delayed start, and the other rookies are more on regular track for where they can go. I will be curious to see like how things also keep playing out with the other rookies in this draft class, namely Ruben Hippolyte at linebacker. He's in the mix for that number 3 linebacker spot. Zay Frazier's been missing a bunch of time with some personal issue off the field that the Bears aren't getting into details, and we don't really need the details of. So like the only rookies that have been out there the whole time and are still out there are Ozzy Trapilo, Ruben Hippolyte, Luke Newman, and Kyle Monangai. And 6th-round offensive lineman. He's been the 3rd string center. Not a lot of expectations there. And then so that's where I think Hippolyte's kind of the next one that I've got circled to see. Like, okay, let's see how quickly he continues to ascend here, because there was a lot of hype for him early on, and then I think it feels like it slowed down a little bit, but hopefully we can get a good Ruben Hippolyte update in the coming days here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen today, you can always check out the Locked On NFL podcast because I co-host it with Tyler Rowland on Tuesday morning podcast. So that'll be coming out, I guess, tomorrow. But Locked On NFL is 5 days a week with all your football talk. And Tyler does a great job in the morning. Comes out twice a day. Tyler Rowland in the morning, and then Tony Wiggins in the afternoon, breaking down all the biggest stories from training camps around the NFL. So more football talk over on Locked On NFL for your second listen of the day. Coming back tomorrow, make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.